Al and the Flying Whale. This is the story of Al, a funny boy who liked to learn a lot. Everything made him curious. Every time he was interested in something, he looked for a way to understand why things were happening. Thanks to his imagination, he could travel wherever he wanted, and his guide was all the books his father read to him every night. Al's father used to read him stories every night. He knew how wonderful it was to travel through reading. And since Al was born, his father began to read all kinds of stories to him, which made the boy develop a fruitful imagination that provided him entertainment at all times. Al's first memory of a story is of a great whale traveling alone through the vast blue sea. In his imagination, the whale did not travel by sea, but by sky. It was easy for him to imagine this, because the same shade of blue as the sky was in the sea. The whale moved freely through the clouds, and occasionally sang with passion, and everyone could hear it. This beautiful memory was deeply ingrained in the boy's mind. That whale is my first friend, the boy used to think every time he remembered her. When he was alone and didn't have much to do, Al would lie down in his backyard and look up at the sky. Before long, a small black spot appeared in the highest part of the sky, as far as the boy could see. The spot was getting bigger and bigger until it had the shape of a great humpback whale. Al smiled and closed his eyes. He flew up to her and climbed up on her back. The whale sang joyfully for being reunited with her friend. "How are you, dear friend?" The boy held her tighter, showing her that he was hugging her more intensely. The whale continued to swim or fly, however you want to interpret it, since everything is possible in the world of imagination. At that moment, the boy asked his enormous friend to take him to some world she knew, but that he did not know about. Al closed his eyes and let himself be carried away. They traveled through a vast topaz-colored hole that appeared in front of them, down a path that only the whale knew, and as they entered, their entire world was left behind. Al glanced sideways and could see how everything around him was transformed into a big meadow where the grass was gray and the sky turned from red to brown, like a magenta sunset over the mountains. Al landed, and the atmosphere looked a bit sad, so he was concerned. If someone lived in that place, they seemed to need help. The whale began to swim in circles in the air, and Al knew she was not comfortable. "Precious friend, you can return to our world quietly. I know this is not a good place for you." The whale shook her head, and Al understood that she didn't want to leave him alone. So he said, "Don't worry about me. I'll be fine. When I need to leave, I'll call you. I promise." The whale floated towards him, and while the boy stroked her huge forehead, the whale sang such a beautiful melody that the boy began to cry and felt stronger than ever. Some flowers even woke up to see where such beautiful music came from. At the end of the song, The whale flew towards the portal through which they had arrived and disappeared, leaving the whole place in silence. The flowers felt a bit sad that they could not continue to enjoy the melody, and then they asked the boy, "Who are you? Why have you given us such a beautiful gift?" Wiping away his tears, Al replied, "My name is Al, and she is my friend. We come from Earth." A beautiful blue flower asked him, "On your Earth, are there many beings that fly and sing as beautiful as her?" Al replied, "Yes and no." All the flowers made confused faces and asked the boy to explain himself better. "My world is extraordinary, and I am proud of it. But unfortunately, whales do not fly. Actually, animals do not speak. They can only do it in my imagination." At that moment, Al began to cry uncontrollably. "What's the matter, interesting visitor?" asked a pink flower. "It scares me that I won't be able to explore new worlds in my imagination when I grow up. Not being able to be with my friend the whale anymore scares me." The flowers understood the boy's concern and came up with a way to help him. "We cannot promise you that everything will be fine, but we can assure you that whenever you want, no matter how much you grow, we will all be there for you. We know that without you, we would not exist, so we are grateful." Al was delighted to hear this and immediately regained hope. "Thank you, my dear friends. I just wonder one thing. Why does this whole place seem so gloomy and sad?" The flowers told him what was happening. A few years ago, the queen of that world, a lovely girl named Rita, had a sore throat and could not sing. Their world was nourished by the melody that the queen provided each morning to all. Just by singing for a while, the trees would fill with fruits, the grass would turn green, and the animals would get the encouragement they needed. Due to her illness, the queen had gradually lost her ability to sing. Many had tried to cure her, but no one had been successful. For that reason, their entire world had weakened, and they were already resigned to live like this forever. Al was saddened by this and decided to help them. He asked the flowers to explain how to get to the queen, but the flowers did not know either. The queen had not appeared in her castle for a long time. Perhaps she had fled out of sadness at not being able to help her people. Al didn't want to believe this and decided to find her himself. The flowers were very happy for the boy's offer, and immediately they called a beautiful golden Pegasus to accompany the boy. The creature was majestic, but looked a little thin. Its golden fur appeared to be spotted, cracked. Al knew that this was also caused by not receiving the energy of the queen's song. In his heart, the boy promised to help these creatures, and riding on Pegasus, he caressed him and told him that he was ready to leave. Pegasus took flight, and despite looking weak, his flying vigor was amazing. They flew over huge plains that were beginning to dry up, near great waterfalls that seemed to be about exhausted, which motivated Al to become more committed to his mission. He couldn't allow this world to disappear. After flying for a while, Al felt that they were approaching the place where the queen was. His instincts told him that she was hiding in the big cave they had just arrived at. Pegasus landed, and Al dismounted. A cold wind seemed to come from the dark cave. "Hi there!" exclaimed the boy. "Is there anyone here?" There was no answer, but the appearance of a silhouette coming out of the cave. It was the queen. She was dressed in a beautiful light pink dress and a crown of green diamonds. Her face showed tenderness, kindness, and appreciation, but her eyes showed sadness. Al bowed and said to the queen, "I am informed of everything that has happened in this beautiful place, and I am ready to help you." The queen began to cry with joy and hugged the boy. She tried to speak, but Al asked her not to, so she wouldn't hurt her throat. They both got on Pegasus and flew towards the queen's castle. When they reached the huge garden of her castle, they got off, and Al asked the queen to lie down on the grass to rest. At that moment, Al closed his eyes. He was calling his friend the whale. In the sky, the big portal suddenly appeared, through which the whale immediately entered. Seeing Al, the whale turned around and around with joy and approached him while he smiled at her and caressed her. "My friend, I missed you too much. This world needs help, and I can't do it alone." Al closed his eyes and kissed the whale. At that moment, the air seemed lighter than it was. The clouds began to move slowly, and the whale began to sing as she slowly rose toward the clouds. Her song was soft and subtle. Just at that moment, the queen began to cry. Her tears were beautiful, like little diamonds that fell to the ground and made it shudder a little. Her throat began to heal, and in that instant, she began to float. She floated and floated until she reached the whale's height and mounted on her back. Her voice joined the song of the whale. Time seemed to stand still. The song of the two was the most beautiful thing a person or creature could hear in their entire life. It was then that everything began to be restored. The sun took on a bright yellow color. The gray grass began to turn green and shiny. The trees began to bear beautiful fruit, and the creatures emerged from their caves, burrows, and trunks. The rivers grew, and the waterfalls regained their momentum. Pegasus regained his beautiful golden hue, and as he was filled with energy, he flew through the skies, rejoicing. Al watched as everything was restored, and his heart leapt with joy. The whale stopped singing, though the queen carried on, and at the end, they went down to the garden. The queen approached Al and hugged him very tightly. "We are very grateful for you having helped us," she said, looking into his eyes. "I had lost hope, but you showed me the importance of not giving up." Al was delighted. That day, everyone in that world had a great celebration. They ate, drank, and danced. Their lives had changed. Al and his friend the whale had to return, and when they said goodbye, the queen blessed him by giving him a big hug of friendship. Al climbed onto the whale's back, and they headed for the portal that connected their worlds. And just before entering, Al looked back, and he could see how beautiful the place had become. Everything was green and brightly colored. Passing through the portal, they returned to our world. Al hugged the whale, and she breached in the air several times with joy. Upon landing, he said goodbye to his friend. "See you soon, my great friend." The whale soared farther and farther away until she was just a small patch in the blue sky. Al opened his eyes, and he was still lying on the grass in his garden. A huge smile spread across his face. He had a great idea. He decided to write about the adventure he just lived. He ran to his room, but before going upstairs, he found his father in the living room reading a book, and he ran to hug him. His father hugged him back. "Thank you," Al told him, and ran to his room. After writing his adventure, he realized that now it would exist forever, not only for him, but also for his children to live it when he reads it to them. After that day, he wrote down every adventure he had with his friend the whale. They visited new worlds, helped many interesting beings, met magnificent creatures, and visited the singing queen whenever they wanted. Even after he became an adult, his beautiful friend the whale would visit him in his dreams, and she would sing beautiful melodies that made him calm down whenever he felt sad. It is never wrong to dream and venture into the world of imagination. There are many quests out there waiting for you. The